favorite worlds. As I've been updating some of my favorites lists slowly, favorite worlds is next for me to do because I said so. So it was probably about a year and a half to 2 years ago, I did this video and I had 5 worlds on the list. I am now updating it to my favorite worlds as of current, and there's only one book that has slid over from that video to this one. Everything else will be new. But before we get into my favorite worlds, a shout out to today's sponsor, Bookfinity. It's a website that gives you personalized reading recommendations based off of your reading type, your personality, what books interest you, and it has a really unique review system based on mood. Last time I worked with Bookfinity, my Discord was loaded with people taking the Bookfinity quiz and sharing their different personality types and discussing that and seeing who matches up with who. So we had so much fun just taking the quiz and figuring out how we match. So like I said, there's a personalized quiz that you can take on the website that matches you with books that align best with your specific reader type. They help make it so that sifting through all your recommendations and making a choice on what your next read is going to be isn't so hard. Their quiz takes time to get to know your personality, lifestyle, and reading habits, and to create an accurate reader type that you will be excited to meet and explore. My thing is, I am never short on book recommendations between watching BookTube and my comment section and in real life friends. I'm constantly getting recommended different books, and my TBR pile is always bigger than how quickly I can get through it. But there are times where I don't want to just pick from books that have been recommended to me because other people have enjoyed it. There are times where I specifically am wanting something that I'm in the mood for. Like for instance, I went to the beach recently and I used Bookfinity to get specific seaside stories because I love when what I'm reading matches what I'm doing. If I'm going hiking, I want a story set in the woods. And Bookfinity has lists curated specifically for that, not just for setting, but for tone and for themes. And they have lists galore that will help you if there's a specific type of story that you want to read, they'll help you find that. And I have loved utilizing them for that. Bookfinity's goal is to really help you enjoy the books you're reading by setting you up with books that are recommended because of you and not because of someone else's taste. So if you'd like to get some personalized recommendations and support me, I have the link in the description of this video to check out Bookfinity. I highly recommend. I've really been enjoying working with them. On to the video. Lord of the Rings! It's probably not surprising because absolutely every time I talk about the series, I talk about the world. I love this world. I love how vivid Tolkien's writing is. I love how he describes every single aspect of it, which a lot of times doesn't work for me, but for this world in particular, it does. I absolutely adore the Shire. I love that when we start the story, we begin in this very small space of the world. We get to know the culture of the Shire. We get to know the daily attitudes and habits of hobbits. We get to know what it's like living there. And the Shire is one of my favorite places to visit in books. And every time I reread this series, every time I come back to it, sometimes I'll just reread the Shire and then like that's all I do. I just spend a day hanging out in the Shire and then I'm happy, I'm satisfied. I just think that it's such a cozy place, minus the passive aggressiveness. Not a fan of passive aggression, and you know, it's prevalent there. But ignoring that, I love it. I love it so much. I love the description of their birthdays and Frodo and Bilbo's birthdays and how they celebrate it. But then not only that, leaving the Shire, I love this world. I love how much life is breathing into it. From when we go and visit Tom and we learn about his wife, just the tiniest little bit, and we see on display this very soft magic system. We see how much power someone can have, how much understanding someone can have in this very vague way that's almost like an observance. Like we're not in Tom's head, we don't know what he knows, but just by being near him, we see so much of what people are capable of if they unite with nature, if they spend time within the world, study it, coexist with it, learn from the world, then they can also learn so many things that feel out of my reach. I just love it. The Ents and their story about the Entwives. There's so many places in this story where I feel like I get just a touch of how vast this world really is. And I just find it all so magical. I find it all so exciting. And I'm lost in the wonder of this world. Next may also not be a surprise, because it's one of my new favorites. It's One Piece. I love portal worlds. I love them so much, and One Piece to me almost feels like a portal world story, because every island that we go to has its own cultures, has its own beliefs, has its own ways of interacting with the world. It's a completely new society, and every time we go into a new island, even the really simple ones like Little Garden, where it's just this prehistoric place, there's dinosaurs, and even the really simple ones, it's like, this is so exciting to explore. But then there's the really complex ones that have an entire ecosystem, that have everything about it is unique. And none of them are just like the last one. And I feel like I'm exploring this vast, exciting world that has an overarching umbrella of leadership, of people who are influencing the entire world. It has connections to it that make it all feel cohesive, but each individual island has its own climate systems and has its own cultural ideals, and it's just, I love the amount of thought that is put into this world, and every time we go to a new island, it's like I get this new thrill in me where I get to explore something new, different, and exciting that will feel completely unique and completely contained within itself while still fitting under this umbrella of the world that just all connects. It's this, I adore the world building in this series. It's also lighthearted and exciting and feels like an adventure, and at the same time, each individual island has its own struggles and difficulties that we get to dig into. It's just, I love it. Next, we're going to talk about Piranesi, and I'll only talk about this one briefly because this is such a tough book to talk about without giving away spoilers. But Piranesi takes place within this house, and it's a very contained story in the house, but also in the perspective of the guy, the main character. I don't know. But one thing that I've learned about myself or I guess maybe one thing that's changed about me, I used to love worlds and magic systems that were really hard rules, and you knew every aspect about it, and it was so thoroughly explained, and I still enjoy that. I will never stop enjoying that, I'm sure. But the more I read, the more I've fallen in love with soft magic systems and soft world building, which does not necessarily mean vague, but it does mean unknowable. There are rules and there are boundaries set into place, but there's also this elusiveness to it where anything could happen. Not anything can happen in the sense of the author has free reign, they can just throw stuff at the wall and it'll stick because it's soft magic systems. No, there are rules and there are boundaries and there are mechanics that we do understand, but at the end of the day, what it feels like is that the magic and the world is bigger than we are. And I've said this before in another video, but to me, soft magic system and soft world building feels more like what I think magic would feel like and the world would feel like if magic were real. And the reason I say that is because I think that if magic were real, magic would be bigger than us. It wouldn't be tameable. It wouldn't be something that we could fully understand. It wouldn't be so scientific where we can never stop exploring it, but eventually we can conquer it. We can have all the ability in the world, which a lot of soft magic systems, you do have the wizard or the character who seems to have that untamable magic. But for the layman, for the normal person, I think that feeling like magic is bigger than you, yes, you have some understanding, yes, you have some ability to use it, but just feeling like it's elusive. I can never fully grasp it. And there's always this uncertainty of if I turn this corner, if I open this door, if I move in this direction, Will it go exactly as I want, or is this system that is bigger and stronger than me going to surprise me this time? And I feel like Piranesi really captures that feeling so well. It's this house that's living and breathing and ever changing, and around every corner, what was there yesterday could not be here today. And to me, reading this book felt like experiencing a world filled with magic, or experiencing a house that was breathing magic, because it was so unknowable and it was so untamable. Yet there were things that I could understand, but none of it was, when I finished the book, it felt like the story kept going and the world kept living, because the story and the world weren't contained within this story. Next up will maybe be a surprise, because it was a surprise to me when I put it on the list, and then whenever I kept making the list and then narrowing the list down to my top 5, it surprised me that it stayed, but it would have been dishonest for me to take it off. So I'm gonna say Aragon. Do I still have that book? Aragon. This is a book that I have not read in so very long. I grew up reading, it was my book. It was my series. Every time a new book came out, I was right there, and I would consume it. I wouldn't consume it quickly because I was a slow reader, very slow reader. Some of my friends would read it 3 times, each sequel, 3 times before I got through it the once. But I absorbed every word, and this is one of those series where I don't know how I would feel about it if I read it again as an adult, and I'm afraid I wouldn't love it as much, which is why I shall not read it again as an adult. But it has stuck with me, and some elements of the story, of the characters, of the world have stuck with me in such a vivid way. And I remember reading the story over and over and over again as a teenager, studying the map and just seeing everything so vibrantly. And this story is largely influenced by The Lord of the Rings, and I've intentionally not put a lot of books that are largely influenced by The Lord of the Rings on this list, because The Lord of the Rings is the original, so it should be the one on the list. But what this book did differently is that it very thoroughly explored certain aspects that were based off of The Lord of the Rings that The Lord of the Rings didn't go into. Like, we went and lived with the dwarves for a long time, studied their culture, studied their daily lives, lived among them. And the same for elves, lived among them in their home and learned their magic and all these things that made it feel still unique of its own, because the world building is not better than Lord of the Rings, don't mishear me, but it just does something different. And even though as an adult, I don't know how I would feel about any of this, it is one of the worlds that has stuck with me the most and that I still like to revisit in my mind and think about, because I enjoyed it so much that, I don't know, right now, it's here. It wasn't on my list last time, and it may not be on my list next time, but right now, at the time that I'm filming this, it's here. I'm gonna end this on a recent read, and that is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. So I've said this repeatedly in other videos, so I apologize, but this book reminded me of a Studio Ghibli film, specifically Spirited Away. The concept of the spirit realm is not exclusive to Spirited Away, so I'm not saying that at all. However, the way it's portrayed, the way it's visualized, feels so much like Spirited Away. This character sacrifices herself to the sea god for a series of reasons, and then as she falls into the ocean, she falls beneath the sea into the spirit world, which is where the sea god is and where the spirits of this world live. So in this story, in this retelling of a myth, and in many stories like this, again, not exclusive, but I'm talking about this one, the concept of this world is that there are minor gods that protect over pretty much every facet of the world. There's the god of the well in the village you live in. There's the god of this particular forest, or the god of this particular patch of flowers or of crops. And when a god is either when it's the thing that it's protecting is destroyed, like let's say a wildfire or deforestation or whatever, then that god would disappear from the earth and just live in the spirit realm. Or if a god is forgotten, they live in the spirit realm even if they're not forgotten or they're thing is destroyed. They live in the spirit realm, period. Or if a god is forgotten, then they lose their memories. So we're interacting with all these gods, some that are still actively working, some that have kind of lost a piece of themselves. And in this world, the way the spirit realm is described, the way characters are connected by a red thread that ties them together, or the way people kind of just fade in and out of things, the river of the dead, and just the way things are visualized, it's so it just feels so flowy, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel like everything is mechanical. It feels like what I would think a spirit realm would feel like, which is unknowable. It doesn't all make sense, and it just kind of is, but it's still cohesive and intentional, and I just really love that kind of world building. But not just that, I just think that this concept of the spirit realm and of the things that tie us together, and this particular world, not just the way it's built, but this world is a very intriguing one to me, and I would like to continue to pull stories that are similar to this one, because I really loved living in this world. And this story itself, my favorite part about this book was the world and experiencing it and going to the different houses that the spirits, you know, resided in or ruled over, and just learning more, just exploring this world was my favorite part of this book. Okay, there you go. Those are my top 5 favorite worlds as of right now. It'll change again because I'll read more books, and that's wonderful. I would love to hear what your favorite worlds are. If you have a top 5 list, top 3, top 1, whatever, I would love to hear about your favorite worlds. There are some worlds that I love that I intentionally withheld from this list because next month I'll be doing my favorite magic systems, and I don't want to be super repetitive, so I'm intentionally some worlds that I considered putting on this list, I kept off because they're magic I love even more, so I want them on that list and not just keep using the same series over and over again as I'm building these lists. So look forward to that. If maybe there's a world that you would have liked to see here, maybe it's coming up for another video. But again, please let me know what your favorite worlds are and why, because I'm always looking for new worlds to sink into. It's one of my favorite parts of stories. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here, Tuesdays and Thursdays on my other channel, which will be linked in the description. I'll see you again soon. Bye.